He looks great. And he's a guy, when given the opportunity, he's been incredibly successful in his career. I think he's got 11 games with 20 or more carries in his career. He's been over 100 yards in 7 of those 11 games. So this is a guy with opportunity who could be productive. And the Browns, I think, are going to be more spread out this year, more 11 personnel, more shotgun. But, you get a big, strong guy like Foreman against the light box. I think he'll have some success. So that's the guy. If you were saying right now, not knowing when Nick Chubb's going to be back, who's going to lead the Cleveland Browns in rushing touchdowns in 2024, barring, an injury between now and the start of the season, I would say D'Onta Foreman's the answer.
What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
Is Deshaun Watson ever going to get back to form? And is a new offensive coordinator in Cleveland the key? How much, if at all, will we see Nick Chubb this season coming off a devastating injury? If he doesn't lead the Browns in rushing touchdowns, who will? Browns Radio Network color analyst and fantasy OG Nathan Zegura offered his insights on the team he spends his time with every day from team headquarters. I'm Joe Dolan. Like this video and subscribe to the FantasyPoints channel for 32 breakdowns of 32 teams. This is Franchise Focus, Cleveland Browns. So, Nate, we typically start with the quarterback position, but I want to get a quick update right away on the status of Nick Chubb. Obviously, as you know, one of the best running backs in football. Devastating injury last year that sent the Browns season sideways. What's it looking like for Nick Chubb, and what do you think his availability is going to be like in 2024?
Yeah, I think it's still a little too early to tell, and thanks for having me on the show today. Nick Chubb suffered, as you said, it was a devastating knee injury, and it's something he's overcome in the past. He did so at the University of Georgia, but this one required 2 different surgeries with some time in between the 2 surgeries to allow the swelling to go down, allow him to heal. And so I don't know when he'll be ready. I'll tell you this, though. I would never bet against Nick Chubb. Could it be week 1? Could he start the season on the pup and then come back? I think you will see Nick Chubb this year. I just don't know when yet. And I think we'll have a better picture of that as we get into training camp and kind of get later into the summer here, hopefully before everybody gets their drafts going.
So the Browns obviously brought back Kareem Hunt following that injury last year. He is not currently on the team. Does that indicate a big belief in Jerome Ford or somebody else who's on this roster?
So I think if you're looking at the Kareem Hunt, and he came and he had a career-high 9 rushing touchdowns last year, I think what's amazing is take Nick Chubb out of the equation, and the Browns running back room almost produced 2,000 total yards and 19 touchdowns last year. Ford had 9, 5 receiving, 4 rushing. Kareem Hunt had 9, and Pierre Strong had 1. So they still produced at a pretty high level last year. So do they believe in Jerome Ford? Absolutely. I think he showed the ability as a runner and as a receiver. I think Pierre Strong's a young guy with a lot of juice, but the name that I'd throw out to you that I think is probably more likely than anyone to kind of get those touchdowns that Kareem Hunt got until maybe Nick Chubb is back is D'Onta Foreman. He looks great. And he's a guy, when given the opportunity, he's been incredibly successful in his career. I think he's got 11 games with 20 or more carries in his career. He's been over 100 yards in 7 of those 11 games. So this is a guy with opportunity who could be productive. And the Browns, I think, are going to be more spread out this year, more 11 personnel, more shotgun. But, you get a big, strong guy like Foreman against the light box, I think he'll have some success. So that's the guy. If you were saying right now, not knowing when Nick Chubb's going to be back, who's going to lead the Cleveland Browns in rushing touchdowns in 2024, barring, an injury between now and the start of the season, I would say D'Onta Foreman's the answer.
That's very interesting, obviously. And the run game could continue to be very important for the Browns because as we're talking right now at the end of May, Deshaun Watson is not throwing every day. He's on a throwing program. The Browns have set that up for him coming off the shoulder injury. Kind of a 2-layered question here, Nate. What exactly was that injury and how concerned are we, but without even getting into Deshaun Watson's level of performance, which we'll get to, how concerned are we that that's something that can linger?
Not going to linger. It was kind of honestly a very freak injury in the way that his bone kind of fragmented. They talk about it like a golf tee when kind of a golf tee splits a little bit in the middle and a piece of it kind of comes off. That's really what happened there. He had the best surgeon in the country working on it, Dr. El Taché out of Los Angeles, and the Browns obviously great stack, Dr. Voos, who is now the head of the NFL Team Physicians Association. So he was in great care. He looks great. I've talked to him. He's feeling great. Yeah, he's on that every other day schedule, but he's able already to start driving the football. And I think it's only a matter of time before he's fully back. My guess is there's no need to rush it. He's getting all the mental reps in terms of going out there with the first team. Even yesterday, for example, when it was open to the media or on Wednesday of this past week, he went out there and took all the first team reps and just kind of, pointed where the ball would go without throwing it. But he can throw the ball. He will be ready when the season goes. And, I think everybody in this locker room believes in Deshaun Watson. And quite frankly, a lot of the veterans came back. And you think about it, Zadarius Smith, Shelby Harris, Rodney McLeod, all came back to this defense and came back because they believe coming out of that Baltimore game, the Browns were going to win the Super Bowl, and they thought Deshaun Watson was going to be a big reason why after he had that brilliant second half. And then, unfortunately, we didn't see him again. So there's a lot of belief in him, and I think they're putting in an offense with the addition of Ken Dorsey and the addition of Tommy Reese, the tight ends coach who was just the OC at Alabama. A lot of concepts and shotgun-based situations that Deshaun's probably a little more comfortable with than maybe that under center back to the defense play action game that we saw Joe Flacco excel in. I think this is going to be more spread shotgun and catered to the things that Deshaun Watson does very well.
So obviously Joe Flacco comes in, leads the Browns to the playoffs and performs very well. I would think even Joe Flacco would admit he turned the ball over a few too many times. But
yes.
So I think you look at the success the Browns had without Deshaun Watson. You mentioned that final Baltimore game. Ultimately, we've seen Deshaun Watson for 12 games with the Cleveland Browns in 2 seasons and really never reaching the heights that he had with the Houston Texans. Why is it different this year? Why did Rodney McLeod and some of those veterans come back to the defense? Why do they believe in Deshaun Watson when we haven't seen the player that he once was really in 4 years now?
Yeah, and that's the $1 million question. That's going to be what our season ultimately becomes this year, right? And I think that, guys saw, and Deshaun Watson, those 12 games, 8-4 as a starter with the Cleveland Browns. So that's a very good record. You'll take that. He actually had a better touchdown interception ratio than Flacco did last year. And you alluded to Flacco turning it over a little bit. I would say it's the changes in the offense and it's what they saw. I think people will take a step back and understand that, he didn't play for a while. He also went from being kind of a very beloved figure in the Houston area, in national media, from his days at Clemson as a national champion, all of that, to being vilified, and obviously has had to deal with that. And I think what they saw over the course of last year, culminating in that Baltimore game, was a guy who finally felt like himself again. And in fact, that's what he said to me coming out of the bus, around the buses after that Baltimore game. He goes, "I'm me again. I feel like I'm back." And so I think people always think about the physical aspect. There's such a mental aspect to playing this game, and especially that position, that if you're not fully confident, if you're not fully believing or trusting or letting it rip, that you're not going to play at the level that you did. You're trying to guide the football there. And so I think that is part of it. And then the other part is, I think, the offense that they're establishing, the addition of Jerry Jeudy. So now our 11 personnel, once Nick Chubb is healthy, is, I think, it's up there, right? It's certainly one of the top groups in the league when you think about Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, David Njoku coming off a Pro Bowl season, and the return of Nick Chubb. That's going to be a pretty darn good group to have out on the field together. A lot of talent in that room. Three first-round picks, or 3 second-round picks and 2 first-round picks. Amari and Jeudy are first. Chiefs first, 3 first-round picks, and then Elijah and Nick Chubb second-round picks. So a lot of talent from obviously big-time schools as well. That's one of the reasons you believe in it. And he's going to be, again, in a system that I think is a little bit more natural to what he has done his whole life, as opposed to learning some of the nuance and the subtlety of that back to the defense, play action, timing-based game that Kevin Stefanski has, quite frankly, become one of the best coaches in the league for that style of offense. Now you're going to have an amalgamation of all those different things.
I obviously, Nate, you have a background in fantasy football, so I think you understand guys getting burned one too many times. The fantasy football community has given up on Jerry Jeudy. He's wide receiver 60 right now on Underdog Fantasy. He's like a 12th round pick. But the Browns trade for him and sign him to a big contract, despite the fact that his production probably hasn't matched his profile and his draft capital. What do the Browns say about acquiring Jerry Jeudy? Why do they think they can unlock more out of him than the Denver Broncos were able to?
Well, they're very excited about having Jerry Jeudy here. I can tell you that firsthand. This is something that's been kind of 2 years in the making, that they've been going after Jerry Jeudy. So one thing, I don't know if you're aware of this or a lot of people out there are aware of this, but the reason Jerry Jeudy went to Alabama was Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is his football idol. And so he went to Alabama to follow Amari Cooper. And now he's going to be in a room with Amari Cooper, who's one of the consummate professionals, one of the great route runners. I think it's also fair to say he didn't have a whole lot of stability at the quarterback position in Denver. and you still look at his yards per target, that's a pretty good metric for understanding efficiency for receivers. He's still around 9 for his career. That's not a bad number. So I think he'll be in a place maybe with a little bit more volume. He's going to have a tremendous mentor and role model in his football hero in Amari Cooper in the room with him. And if you look at the Browns' track record in the past, take David Njoku, for example. David Njoku got paid before he became a Pro Bowler. And then he became a Pro Bowler. Andrew Berry, that's what this organization believed he would be. They paid him, and then he did become that. And so now his deal actually looks really good. And I think there's a lot of belief in this building that if Jerry Jeudy is who they believe he is, that contract he signed is actually going to look like a steal for the Cleveland Browns. And so I like the move. It gives you guys, it's going to be very hard to play man coverage against us because you think about guys in terms of separation rates and in terms of beating man coverage. Amari, Jeudy, and Elijah Moore are all near the top in that. So I think it's going to help dictate what defenses can and cannot do to the Cleveland Browns, which then helps the play caller and helps the quarterback.
David Njoku, as you mentioned, he got paid, then became a Pro Bowler. It was really kind of with Joe Flacco where Njoku got unlocked and became like a true threat. Why are you optimistic about him in this new offense?
Because I think we're going to throw the ball more than we have in the past. And I think that you look about 11 personnel being able to spread out. So now you're going to get Chief. He's too big and strong to be covered by nickel corners and even by a lot of safeties, and too fast. And he's too fast to he'll run away from linebackers. So I think he's a mismatch waiting to happen as well for the Cleveland Browns. And, there's only one football. And that's why I think you said the fantasy community's been burned. I think, look, Deshaun Watson, you get him as your number 2 quarterback if you draft a second quarterback in a league. That's a lottery ticket to me because he has the potential with all these weapons to put up very, very big numbers. And he's a good runner. He'll give you some yards with his legs. He'll give you some touchdowns on the ground. I think that Chief, looking for him to go above 80, 882, 81, 882, and 6. We'll see, because I think you've got Amari. I think you're going to have Jeudy take a big chunk as well. This should be a 4,000 plus yard passing team. Last year they got to 4,011. This should be, this should be a team that's in the 4,500 plus range. So there will be yards to go around there. I still like Chief as a kind of a back half number 1 tight end. I like Amari as a solid number 2 receiver. And then Jeudy, I think you get him as you said 60. That's a 5th receiver and a 2. Like the other thing, think about if you're in a keeper league or a dynasty situation. Dynasty, Jeudy'd already be on a rush. Let's say it's a yearly keeper league where you get to keep a couple people from the previous year's team based on where they're drafted. There's a good chance if Jerry Jeudy delivers the way that he did, it's going to be hard for the Browns to keep everybody together. Amari Cooper's at $20 million. So there's a scenario in which Jerry Jeudy follows his mentor into that number 1 role for the 2025 season. So I think he has in that kind of a league. You get him as your 5th receiver, you're sitting on a gold mine for this year and potentially for the future.
So you just mentioned, before we let you go, you just mentioned that, Amari Cooper's there at a big number. He turns 30 this summer. Yep. The Browns have made investments in younger receivers in the last couple of years. I believe they made consecutive 3rd-round picks at the position. Yep. They drafted Jamari Thrash in the 5th round this year, and then, of course, traded for Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore, he's kind of their number 3 receiver right now, but of those other 3, Cedric Tillman, David Bell, and Jamari Thrash, is there a chance any of these guys steps up in this new wide receiver heavy kind of offense?
I think Cedric Tillman would be the obvious one. You just look at him, the size, the speed. He's got all of it, played at a very high level in the SEC. I think last year, the game's fast in the National Football League. 21 catches, 224 yards. I think that he has an opportunity in some situations to get more run. Like he would be the next guy up, in my opinion. There are going to be a lot more choice routes, a lot more option routes. That's something Elijah Moore does very well. David Bell does well at that also. But I think it's really Elijah's the 3rd. And if Cedric Tillman can push him out, that's something. But I think maybe you're looking more for Cedric Tillman to be a starter in 2025, more so than this year. But he's the name that if I was thinking, I'm looking at a league where I'm thinking of a few-year horizon of the guys you mentioned, he's the one that I would have at the top of that list.
Nathan Zegura is a SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio OG. And Nate, I don't know if you know this, but we still hear your voice on the channel because when we throw to the Cleveland Browns radio network live on Sundays,
sure,
Kelly, you're calling the games as the Cleveland Browns color analyst. And of course, he also co-hosts Browns Daily every Monday through Friday at 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern, which is why we got to get you out of here. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Zegura. Nate, it's been wonderful talking to you, breaking down the Browns. Always a pleasure.
Dude, a pleasure as well. And let's circle back before people get into their drafts. Once we get to the Greenbrier and get into training camp, and I'll be able to give you a little bit better of a picture of what it's really going to look like and some of the injury statuses. But I love talking with you. Love, obviously, anybody who is Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio will always be near and dear to my heart. So great talking with you today, brother.
Awesome, Nate. Wonderful, everybody joining me here for Franchise Focus. We'll be back with more teams in the coming days.